Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation of Treaty 3 territory. With me today are Ms. Carrie Linkladder and Mr. Richard Whitbread. My name is Harvey Diamond, and I'll be chairing our panel. The City Assessment Department is being represented by Jonathan Spacek, and our administrator is Fran Picoto. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note that you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property, and once your hearing has concluded, you may leave the meeting. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision are requested have been described in each application, and we will be limiting discussion to those matters, and the statements that are made at this hearing must be sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to such matters must be sworn in. Be advised the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decision based on the evidence provided at this hearing and will issue written orders that will be mailed to all participants as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Assessment Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or to classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information on do so will be included with our order. We expect the hearing process. I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by any questions, and each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all of the evidence upon an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will form part of a public record. And today on the docket, we have items 2 through 8. And Ms. Picoto, you can please affirm the assessor's testimony and Mr. Newman's as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Jonathan Spacek.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Mark Newman.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the first item is a property at 119 Polford Street. And from reviewing the material that was before us, I've seen there's some preliminary matters that we have to discuss. If that's the case, Mr. Assessor, is there anything that you wish to bring forward before we commence?
I have no preliminary issues.
Okay, Mr. Newman?
Well, as the panel will have noted from my brief, this is a parking lot that serves the 2 adjacent commercial properties. And so one of the items I articulated in my brief was the concept that this matter should be adjourned to be heard with those adjacent properties on the basis that they comprise a single economic unit. And in my supporting materials, I gave you some history of this concept and the need for suburban commercial properties to have parking, and gave you the decision relating to the parking structure at the Forks, where the municipal board recognized that no value will be put upon it because it's an integral part of the economic being that is the Forks. So that was my first position, and if the board is prepared to accede to that, that will be fine, and that will be the end of the matter for today. Alternatively, I would then give you an alternate submission and hear the assessor's evidence as well.
Okay, you also, Mr. Newman, I think give us a directive that if we do make a finding and confirm the assessment, or I guess assess any amount, that you want us to give a directive to the board that's going to hear the adjacent applications, that they should deduct from any assessment of those properties the amount that we determine is the correct assessment of this property. I think that's what you said. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think that we have, first of all, okay, I'm going to ask the assessor if he has anything that he wishes to respond to at this point.
I have no questions at the moment.
Questions, or do you have any response to Mr. Newman's application or your position on it?
Yeah, I think my position on this one, this separate lot, is that I guess I have to refer to, like, Mark has included some evidence where it's been considered one economic unit, and I don't have the leases in front of me to confirm if it's one economic unit or not. Like there are situations where this happens, and when it does, it's, at least in the cases where I've done it, it's where I have a copy of the lease. I've seen that the lots are included only for use for the subject properties, like the other, not the subject property, the other properties that are related, and those lots are 24 hours a day reserved for that. And again, it's without seeing that or having that in front of me, I believe I'd like to go forward on, just the separate lot on its own value and deal with it that way.
Okay, I think that we have to go into camera and make a determination how we're going to proceed. Thank you. Yes, we've had discussions on this matter, and we've come to the conclusion that we'd have to get a lot of information on this property that we don't have before us. And that basically pertains to the two adjacent properties that Mr. Newman claims are one economic unit with this particular parking lot. And on that basis, we felt that Mr. Newman's request for adjournment, so all three matters can be heard by the same parties at the same time, by the same panel at the same time, makes sense to us. And so it will be adjourned to a future docket to be heard with the properties at 435 Stradbrook and is it 130 Osborne and 130 Osborne? So all three will be heard together, and a determination can be made at that time on the respective assessments for all three properties.
Thank you.
Their finding. So, Mr. Newman, I guess your first request has been granted, and you will be dealing with it at a future date.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Bye now.
Bye-bye, thanks.
I've readmitted Mr. Neufeld.
Okay. So we now you can swear Mr. Neufeld in, then he's see on all of the rest of the matters before us today.
Yes. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, our first property that Mr. Neufeld is dealing with is 160 Osborne Street. And I don't see any material filed by the applicant here, but Mr. Spacek, you can proceed when you're ready.
Yeah, sorry, if you don't mind me interrupting. And I didn't realize it was Mr. Spacek who was going to be hearing this, and I only found out when I got his evidence. I should have notified him, but we don't get the name of the assessor. So the site is under construction and it is being occupied shortly. So we think that a supplemental is going to be issued for it as an apartment. No point talking about the land today as a result.
So are you requesting a confirmation of the assessment, Mr.
Yeah,
Neufeld?
yeah, I guess that's the appropriate thing to do.
Okay. And you give us the reason why. So I think unless Mr. Spacek has any questions.
No, thank you for stepping in.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Our next property is at 430 Wardlaw Avenue. And Mr. Spacek, that's item number 4. When you're ready, you can proceed.
And I'm going to interrupt again. This is part of the same project, and this one is not as far along as the Osborne project. My view of it is that it won't be completed till mid next year. The owner believes it'll be done by the end of the year. So again, a supplemental is going to come. So I think we'll just confirm this as well.
Okay. Okay. And our next property is 634 Portage Avenue. And when you're ready, Mr. Space, you can proceed with your evidence on item number 5.
Thank you. I'm just reopening. Be one
And
moment.
sorry, could I ask that the file numbers be read out as well? Because I have the assessor's evidence without an address on it. So I could find that quickly.
Yeah, it's 24-4143, 634 Portage.
414, thank you. Now I'll shut up.
No problem. I will start. I have it here. We are looking at roll number 1209058600, located at 634 Portage Avenue. We have a 2025 assessment of $2,178,000. We have vacant land today. If you've ever driven down Portage, you saw this. It used to be an auto body. It's been demolished. It was bought in 2019 for approximately, so sorry, turn to my page 2 if you don't mind. Everybody can see the parcel of land located on the corner of Portage and Furby. It's been demolished, the old auto body on there. It's sold. You can see on my page 3, it's just there's been 2 sales, with the most recent 2019. It was purchased for $2,650,000, which works out to approximately $75.91 a square foot. If we scroll down to my page 4, you can see the workup. We have a net area on this piece of land of 39,954 square feet. This is a net rate of $62.31, which gets you the total value for the 2025 assessment of $2,178,000. On page 5, you can see I've included 5 close to downtown and downtown land sales. Again, we have the comparable one is on Donald Street. We have the downtown zoning. Sale date was September 2022 for $1.5 million. And I've included pictures and locations of all the comparables in addenda style after, so you can scroll down and look. Even as I'm talking, you can see where these are. But this is an 18,050 square foot lot. It sold for $83.10. We have another comparable, my second comparable end on Maryland Street. This is near Westminster and Maryland. It is a vacant lot, and you can see that it's 8,217 square feet residential, multifamily zone for $74.84. My comparable number 3, we're looking at Spence Street. This is the turnoff where St. Mary's Ave hits Portage. And again, this is a rectangular lot. Sold September 17 for $950,000. It's 12,883 square feet for $73.74, zoned residential. We have comparable number 4, 196 Colony Street. Again, residential multifamily, sold October 17 for $362,000. The smaller lot at 6,601 square feet for $54.84. And then finally, my last comparable is just located at 198 Sherbrooke Street. This is zoned commercial. It sold February 20, 645,000, 12,300 square feet for $52.44. So again, 5 comparables. Again, nothing is currently been put up on 634 Portage Avenue. I've just scrolling down. I do not believe the only thing I've included extra on this one is page 16. I just included the demolition permit just to show that it was the old auto body has been demolished and it's vacant land. And then I just included a portion of a city council meeting that confirmed it's RMU. So the zoning used to be C2 commercial. It's been changed to residential multi-use, and there was a delay from my memory on this one with the zoning there's some things that have to be followed through on, and they were granted an extension. So if you turn to finally my page 22, you can just see the zoning map, how it's not red anymore, it's blue. I mean, this is not right. It's not, it says it's zone type residential mobile home park. That's not true, but it was RMU, residential multi-use, or it's becoming that at least. So originally C2 commercial, now residential. That is my brief. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newfield, any questions?
Yes, I do. Just starting with the document on the extension of time. What is your understanding of this, and where did it come from?
This was just I just tried to search 634 Portage for the city council notes for anything that's come up on it. I was curious as to why it wasn't C2 anymore. This came up. This is the most, at least what I could find, May 30th, 2023, the most this is the most updated information I had, what I found in the administration report. I would have to read it all out loud again, but I'm sure you will be able to give your up-to-date explanation.
No, I'm just wondering if you had said in there that they were requested the extension for completing the requirements, and I don't see that in here.
Sorry, maybe, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of another one. Just give me a moment.
Okay, they're on page 19, their lawyer said that they requested an extension to complete the required registrations. And then Appendix B, was Appendix D attached to here?
I guess not. I believe there was an email, but maybe I did not include it.
And do you know what those requirements were?
No, I don't have an up-to-date list of what because they have a 1-year limit set to expire April 20th, 2023. Maria sent in a extension of time application that requested the time limit to satisfy the coming of force. So I just, from my understanding, was when I was reviewing this, I believe that there was still something to be figured out for
Okay,
finalizing the zoning. That's where I was on it.
And this on page 17 indicates that it was bylaw 54/2022 that and the file listed on page 18 sorry, not, I'm looking for it. I had it, I lost it. I'm just trying to look. Here we go.
Stipulates the following on
page
page 19.
November 25th, 2021 was the acceptance of the recommendation. Do you have any other past history on this application?
No, not attached to my brief.
Okay. And on the sale of it that you list on page 3, do you have any knowledge of the conditions of sale?
No, I don't have anything extra to it.
And of course, today it's vacant, as you stated. What on your comparables that you're looking here? Firstly, you have the first one is in downtown zoning. Now, to be fair, isn't the downtown zoning far more permissive in the density?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure I would assume you have more options with the downtown zoning for density as opposed to outside of downtown.
I apologize. I should have started this with the first question. When you buy land for an apartment, is it either, I don't know whose policy I'm asking about, but do you know that in the marketplace, what would be the unit of value that they're going to be making their decisions on?
How many apartments how many units?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Or like, is that something that, like, that's in the market? Is that something that the assessment department follows? Or you just go square feet?
Just, well, it's, yeah, zoning square feet, what it sells for.
Yeah, okay. So in these sales here, was there any research done to determine if any of these had variances for a higher density?
No, just the zoning that whatever density is allowed within the zoning is, kind of assumed, and then I know that zoning is, whether they're going for variances or conditional uses or, I did not do any extra research into past what the zoning
Oh,
is
no,
for these.
yeah, I know, and I don't, I don't want to testify now, but uh, I'm going to suggest to you about the subject and several of your properties. I know for sure number 5 were not sold until that greater density was approved. Does not the city take that into account when they do their comparable values?
Again, just what I have for the sale and the zoning and the sales are all reviewed, but we don't have a separate category for, how many units they could put on that sale.
Okay. Now, the other thing that I was wondering about is that several of your sales, the last 3, are somewhat dated. Does your model do anything to adjust the sales for time? And let me put this into context. These units, these have all been bought for multifamily use or for further development. Does not the passage of time and the impact of interest rates, does your model include that in your valuation?
The 2025 value of $62.31 a square foot, again, is using it's using analyzed sales at the time of date. Whether I am not sure how much adjustments have been made per sale, but it would be on a sale by sale basis for time adjustments.
Well, and that's one. Does your time adjustment, do you know anything about how the time adjustment is applied to the land sales?
I don't have those details.
Okay. Those are it for my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, any questions of the assessor?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
No, my question was asked and answered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I don't believe I do either. I think Mr. Neufeld, he asked a lot of questions, and I think that he covered the waterfront for us. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. You can proceed with your evidence now.
Thanks. I always wonder which questions got covered, but that's okay. What you're going to hear today is going to be a fairly common theme. And the theme is that the impact of interest rates and time has put a downward effect on development. And, people superficially, one would say, what do interest rates have to do with land? A lot. All these sales, all these comps, the entire developments are predicated on doing a development. If your development comes about and the interest rates are too high, you do not build on your development, which means you would not purchase the land for a long-term hold, because your interest rate makes your project work, not the cost of what anybody thinks land is worth. When you do your project analysis at the beginning of it, you factor these in. Now, at the time that this was sold, it wasn't the transaction data. I'm sorry, I'm just going to look at this again, but the assessor has stated cleared titles in 2019. Now, I know, because this is a client of mine, I've known Don White for many, many years. They had been working on this project for years before this and had it planned out. Now, it finally cleared titles in 2019. And at the time it cleared titles, they had also had approval for higher density from property and planning. And that's listed in the applications which were made. Eventually it was approved in 2021, and that's par for the course. Application was made years prior. And my information is firsthand, working with Don White's group, that they would not have bought the property had not the density been approved at a higher rate. They had very strong indication it would be. That's what predicated it. And then it was also predicated on interest rates. And the interest rates at the time were, I have these listed somewhere, I thought. I have a summary of the interest rates listed on my page 4. And what I had done was I put the 3 and 4, I looked at comparables that we had and put the interest rate at the time of sale beside the sale, and then try to relate it. Does the interest rate impact sales prices? And on page 5, the graph is quite clear. As the interest rates increase, the rate per square foot decreases. And it's just common sense. These people are, I mean, this isn't genius work here. This is just money. If you can afford to build it and the interest rates are low, then you build it. Now, when they first planned on building it, they had the projections had been to qualify for a CMHC guaranteed loan. At the time, that was a rate of 1.75%. Today, if you tried, or in April 1st, 2023, if you tried to apply for the same loan, it would be the high 4s, closer to 5. In other words, interest rates tripled. That's why the project hasn't proceeded. Now, we're tasked with finding market value as of April 1st, 2023. They bought the land several years prior when it was viable. It is no longer viable. And had they put the property back on the market on April 1st, 2023, they would have suffered a loss. They made the decision to go for a long-term hold and carry the land until such time as the economic conditions improved. And that's the nature of everything that's happened in our world following the effective date most people understood rates were going up was April 1st, 2023. That's when the Bank of Canada said, we're going to give you increases. They actually peaked in March of 2023 at the Bank of Canada rate. And on my chart, you can, page 4, you can get an indication of the sales that we used to contemplate the impact of interest rates on sale prices. And at the bottom of it, page 4, we have land selling for $18 a foot because the interest Bank of Canada rate was 4.5%. But meanwhile, at the high end of the scale, you've got one in just a little bit higher up there at $80 a foot when the interest rate was 0.50. That's what we're looking at here. Now, this is not a overly complicated topic, nor is it one that is too oblique to matter. This is the reality. We work with at Colliers, we work with developers all the time. This is the conversations that is occurring on development. Again, it's not high level thinking, it's low level thinking. You can't make a go of the project. You're not putting an apartment in the ground, investing another $20 million and borrowing money at 5% because your return is going to be a loss until the interest rates stabilize. So that's what's holding off a lot of projects. Now, they had other factors as well that came in after their sale. Firstly, on the approval, and I'd asked the assessor about what is it they had to reconsider. On our page 11, outlined in red, was the requirement for affordable housing. Now, what that means is that, and I had forgotten the ceiling on affordable housing, but you have to make available units at a lower rental rate than you would get from market, which indicates lower rates of return. Now, that is not only that has a double impact. First of all, it is less money. Secondly, and I'm trying to be politically correct here, but people who buy or rent places, you ever sit through one of these committees at Board of Adjustment or at council, the underlying theme is always the same. I don't want projects put into my nice neighborhood. It's going to devalue my property. Everyone's saying that. But that's the truth of the matter, is that it is a subjective viewpoint held by tenants and owners of property that they don't want to be in social assistance neighborhoods. So it does change the image of the property, and it changes what direction you're going to look at, it's not morally correct, but it exists. And it's something we always have to consider. The concept of conformity, the best neighborhoods are those that are conform and all have the same sort of property and they all grow at the same rate. The other impact that had on it is that as the interest rates were low, many more projects came to market, and these projects were at a more advanced stage than the subject. So whatever sort of absorption that they had hoped to consider was already going to be picked up by other properties, and these ones were some have happened and some are to happen. But I had written down here the refinery district. That's the sugar beet lands. That project had happened. It's a couple thousand units up there. The Pemby, which was the redevelopment of the Pembina Hotel, that's just about to open its doors. And that one got a density of 190 square feet per unit. Super dense, same as the subject, but they were ahead of the game. The two apartments that I just had confirmed, but there's another 150 units that are going to hit the market on Osborne. U of M got approval in 2021 for 10,000 units on their land, and that's going to go ahead. And then there's Capion, which there are no plans to our knowledge formal, but there's an indication that they're going to want to put up a lot of multifamily. So those are the factors, and essentially what we have here is a market change based on externalities of interest rates, and as we all know, there was some people say it's the COVID reaction, some people say it's a market correction that was required. It's irrelevant what caused it. It happened, and the market goes up and down. And I was saying this yesterday in a hearing, and it's kind of very, very indicative of the frame of mind. In Manitoba, Winnipeg, we've always been this, we looked at the market and said, well, it's either going to be stable or just go up slightly. We don't know about ups and downs because we've never faced them. If you lived in Alberta, you would see the ups and downs. It's tied to the oil prices. They're just used to it. Things go up, things go down. It's like a wave. This is probably the first time in Manitoba we've seen this major impact, and it's impacted projects like this. They're not going in the ground. It's impacted retail. Office has killed office, and some forms of industrial prospered, some did not. So this is what we're going to feel now. Our legislators, in their wisdom, have initiated a 2-year appeal cycle. In 2 years, things might be different. But there's a reason we have 2 years at a time. It isn't so we can just simply say they're going to go up and up. It's so we can have market corrections. 23 is a down year. Who knows? 25 is going to be different. And there's just this incredible reluctance to acknowledge that, especially by the assessment department. Regardless, that's my argument combined with the issues. And we had looked at a number of sales. They're all listed here. Page 3 has all those refinery sales. And I apologize. We had this was some workup I had done earlier. Some are listed at on a price per acre. Some are listed as a price per square foot. We had put our conclusion on page 1 at 1.4 million per for a about 3/4 of an acre. So that's going to extrapolate to about 2 million an acre, or $40 a foot. 40 times 43,560 is a little under 2 million an acre. And that's where the market's at today, if they had to put it up for sale. Anything that happened before the interest rate increase is irrelevant to us. And plus, you also have to know if the sale was actually agreed to before then, not just the title date. These sales linger after the first offer is made. They usually take about a year and a year and a half to close, because they're always subject to conditions. And one of the conditions, as in the subject's case, was approval for higher density. The Pemby approval for higher density. We are fighting a time lag. that's my presentation, and I understand that most of it is rather verbal. Um, because this isn't the sort of thing that you're going to look at hard evidence and find a trail that makes sense. The trail that makes sense is the change in the interest rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater, any questions?
You're muted, Carrie.
Ms. Linklater, are you there?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my little button here for my mute and unmute. I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Linklater. Mr. Whitford, any questions?
Just clarify for me then, please, Mr. Neufeld, when you say these developments, large competitors, Refinery Pemby, U of M, there are quite a number of other developments. Those ones are all down in the south end, I believe, of the city, nowhere near Portage Avenue. There are a number of other competitive developments. You're suggesting that those have a mitigating effect on the value of this property. Is that, in short, what you're telling us?
Yeah, and you've actually brought up something I forgot to mention. One of the major impacts we've noted in our marketplace is that if a sector of the city was doing better, it was the Southwest. The other parts of the city were not. If there was a, you know, developers, like I said, they're not geniuses, but they think the Southwest is better, and they think that the prospects are better, and any projects you do see will have happened there. Yeah, there are smaller ones, and we've dealt with some. We have this one represented in Transcona that they've got about 100 and some odd units, and their experience have been like a ratchet. You know, they fill up, they empty out because the 1 year of free rent's gone. They fill up, they empty out. They're not going to get absorbed for years, and that's what you're more prone to see on these projects that started in different parts of the city. The ones I'm in the Southwest were the major ones, the big ones that are still going to happen.
What I have an understanding that the rents in a number of these properties are extremely high relative to what's out in the market, in light of $2,000 to $3,000 and $4,000
Right.
a unit. Can I ask, does that rent not have some
Well,
impact?
and I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't get that rent on Portage Avenue. Now, the building costs you the same amount of money to put up. Your land could have a slight differential, but you're going to make $2,000 to $3,000 a foot in the southwest part of town. You're not making on Portage Avenue. That's the stalling of the different sectors of the city. So if you have it in a place where the numbers are there, you're going to get it, and that's why they still happen. Their model had high enough rents to beat the interest rate. Another thing about them is most of the ones I know in the refinery district had locked in mortgages prior to the increases. So they had got the 1.75 button down on a builder's mortgage and extended into a 5-year term. That one I knew for sure. I don't know the financing on the others. Well, U of M is self-financed, and I don't know the other ones.
Thank you for your comments. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Whitford. Yeah, Mr. Neufeld, I know that in the past, people would buy land and hold it for sometimes for decades to wait for it to develop. And a lot of that land that I remember people purchasing in the 1970s, I see now has apartment buildings on it everywhere, especially along going north on McPhillips, north of Levi, on both sides of the road. There's countless apartment buildings going up there now with the high interest rates you referred to. I noticed the same thing going south along Kenniston and that area. There's multitudes of new buildings. I'm shocked to see how many are going up. I noticed the same thing around Costco area on Pegasus in the East London area. And so the high interest rates obviously have not curtailed those projects. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, well, I can speak to some that I'm familiar with. I know the situation with the ones on McPhillips and the ones on Keniston, because I know that they predated the interest rate, and the ones on Keniston, of course, actually it's the same owner as 634 Portage, who has most of them. And they were built at a time when they could get the good mortgage rates. The one on McPhillips had a locked-in mortgage, so prior to the building, he did quite well at his financing, and his project could proceed. And I suspect that most of the ones that did go were based on like a mortgage. When you begin your project, you go to your lender, and it could be 2 years before it happens, and you try to lock in. And if you can lock in and get the CMHC guaranteed rate, they have a provision where you can do a builder's mortgage that goes into a conventional mortgage, and the builder's mortgage rate is dealt with in the same manner if you've been approved for it, and that would be I believe most of the projects that went up happened that way. The math on even $1,500 a unit to support a 5% mortgage rate provides virtually no return on investment. The ones I know of, some other ones in the Exchange District, the ones that went up, it was the same thing. The man actually, in this case, signed his mortgage for a contractor's rate. Construction rate, and carry over 1 day before the major increase in rates. That's usually the reason why. And I know these anecdotally, nobody publishes this and says, "Oh, here's interest rates and everything." We have a fair bit of insider knowledge here, and we have to be careful how much I tell people about what we know. But that is the bottom line. It's all been about mortgages. Now, the amount that one saves on that is incredible. There was a sale that came up after the rates had increased, and the guy had locked in at 1.75, and he ended up saving $600,000 a year on his interest because of the low rate compared to current. Some of it got capitalized, as was attributed to the income on the property, and therefore the cap rate was actually quite good. But it's always viewed in the long run. So if you triple your interest rate for 5 years, you're not going to assume it's going to carry that way forever. So what it does is it in the historical perspective, depending where you locked in, you're going to get probably about a 6/10 of a hit on your cap rates. That's what our office has figured out. But it's stalling new projects because the new project won't start until they have a good head steam up, which is a good locked-in mortgage at a low rate. So because the first years are the hardest while you're absorbing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neufeld. I think that I get it, what you're saying, but I guess my question is then, how long can you lock in a rate once you get it? How long is before that mortgage has to be advanced?
Yeah, well, the CMHC is 5 years and then a renegotiation.
No. I'm not asking the term. I'm asking you, when you get a locked-in rate and you're going to start construction, how long is it before you have to draw that mortgage to secure that rate? Because they're not going to hold it for you forever.
Okay. That would be based on your contract with your lender.
It's usually 3 months, is it not?
Well,
usually,
you
have to advance the mortgage within 3 months, do you not?
I think that the typical clause in there is that break ground and it becomes it goes into effect, and yeah, you do have a time limit to break ground because they're not going to hang on forever. You're correct there. Yes, I don't know the exact amount.
It's been a long time since I practiced law, but I did these developments, and I recall as construction was going, the mortgage would be advanced, but it would be advanced at that time on the basis of prime plus, usually maybe 0.25% plus whatever the lending rate was. And when the construction project was finished, then you could lock in the rate. and you weren't aware what that rate's gonna be because you didn't know when you were gonna be able to take that final draw.
Okay, now what year
Is
would
that
that have
changed
been?
today? Is that
No,
changed
what?
today? I'm gonna tell you, I'm 17 years away from that. So I'm not gonna say that's still,
Okay.
so I'm gonna tell you that's still correct. You might have more information than I do.
Well,
I'm just
well,
based on my experience from a long time ago, and I'm not, so that's why I'm asking the question, because I don't know.
okay,
I'd like you to acquaint me and make me knowledgeable on something that maybe I'm behind the eight ball on now.
well, across Canada, it's been identified that we have a shortage of housing, and I think the CMHC made it policy with some direction from the federal government to do something about it. And at some point, it's actually in our lender's report, and I don't know if I put that in here. No, I put a real short version, but there's a breakdown now. There's a specific contractor's loan for construction now, and you can get it guaranteed at the lower rate. But you're right, there will be restrictions on it. It's not just because, of course, fraud is the major problem, right? You extend a bunch of money to somebody and they decide not to build and walk away with it. No, there will be stages. There'll be progress reports,
Yeah,
and everything. But no, it'll start and become effective with the construction project.
yeah.
And
No, I'm sure, Mr. Neufeld, and I know the way it used to be done. The developer would have to put his own money into it.
yeah,
They do an inspection, and they'd always make sure when they advance that mortgage that there's sufficient money held back on that mortgage to finish the project if the developer walked away from it.
yeah. The last one I worked with, I was telling you about the guy who locked in a day before the rates went up. He had done demolition of the prior building, and then he became effectively locked into his new contract, and then he began his new build. So and then he took progress payments, and he kept his locked in rate for the 5-year term. And incidentally, at the end of the 5-year term, if you're doing CMHC, you still get the CMHC advantage, but it'll be based on rates at the time. So the low rate was 1.75 when the Bank of Canada was 0.5. So if the Bank of Canada stabilizes back at 2%, then you're going to see the CMHC is about 3.5%, 3.2. So it's still an advantage on that basis. But the whole scheme is all about timing. So 634 Maryland, getting back to our problem at hand, didn't have anything locked in because they were still going through civic approvals, and the interest rates rose, and they missed the boat. There are other projects. The one I confirmed, Osborne, they were in the ground. That one took a longer time to approve, but they had broken ground and they were working on it, and they had it all in, so they could make it happen. There are other projects you brought up on Kenaston. All those buildings in Sterling Lion, they own 3/4 of them. And the same idea, just pile them on one by one, and it worked fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neufeld. We'll know that we've heard the evidence on this one. We'll have to make our findings. So we'll now proceed to item number 6, which is the property at 245 Flora Avenue. And Mr. Spacek, when you're ready, you can proceed with your evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are looking at file number 24-4106. This is roll number 1400102150. We're now at 245 Flora Avenue, which, if you turn to page 2, is just located off of Main Street, south of Selkirk. We are looking at a parking lot, so we have vacant commercial land. 15,299 square feet, and the total 2025 value for this is 279,000. So if you take a look at page 2, this is the parking lot associated across the back lane to the east. So towards Main Street, you'll see there's a credit union. Again, the same owner in both properties, and from my understanding, this lot is used as parking lot for the credit union. The value of this property, you can see how it's worked up on page 4. We have again $28,000 of detached structure, which is just again, we have 80. If you look at the first kind of chart I have, we have breakdown just showing how we have again $14,000 of parking wire, and then of parking like wired, you know, sorry, the word escapes me, where we plug them, and then paving asphalt, and then the actual majority of this value for this parking lot is 15,299 square feet at $16.41 a square foot. So that's $251,000. When you combine those together, you get our total assessed value of 251,000, or sorry, 279,000. If we scroll down a little more to page 5, again, this is a parking lot, but the zoning for it is residential. So I just did my best to find some smaller residential lots that, you know, it's hard to find many residential lots that serve the purpose of parking behind a credit union, but I just have, my first 3 are smaller lots, 7 to 8,000 square feet that have sold and become some sort of a multi residential. And my last 2 comparables, one of them, the fourth comparable, is located on Isabel. 235,000 is sold in 2020, 9,000 square feet at $23.68 square feet. It hasn't been developed into anything. It's just vacant land at the moment. And then my fifth comparable is a parking lot on Isabel that's zone R2. So somewhat similar to the subject parking, but it's very an old sale in 2014 for 150,000, which is $14.89 a square foot. You can see pictures of these comparables scrolling down on page 6, 7, and 8, so you can get a better idea of how those comparables look. And if you have any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I was having was trying to follow this again. So you've got land at 251 and then a structure at 28. And the land at 251 is, okay, I see it. So I'm looking at page 4. The structure, detached structure, appears to be paving, is it not?
Yeah, paving and then parking wired.
What's parking wired?
I'm going to assume it's 32 parking plugs.
Electrified.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, gotcha. How old's the paving?
Well, I don't have the year date. We have it at 80% depreciation, so it's I'm going to assume pretty old.
Yeah, okay. And so then you 1641 on the land, and your land sales are all rather old, are they not?
Yeah.
Okay. Since we went through all that talk earlier, I mean, and there's nothing you can tell us about how the model works for that land valuation. Like I'm looking at these sales and wondering why the highest rate was achieved in 2016.
The
And
highest one was 2018, but yeah, there's a range.
2018. Yeah.
The first 3, like, yeah, again, it's tough to find residentially zoned parking lots off Main Street. It's just it's an odd duck. And
Your 2020 sale is lower than your
yeah.
18 and 16.
Yeah, and they're like, again, if you look at the Isabel, the fourth sale compared to 863 Jubilee, like 863 Jubilee became some sort of multifamily.
Yeah.
It became it's I assume that would sell more than like Isabel Street at the corner lot. It hasn't even become anything yet. I don't know what's going on with it, but I found it almost more comparable to our subject than the higher one at Jubilee. I'm not trying to say ours is $32.
No, I mean, it's just also the part of town, Jubilee
Mhm.
versus
Yep.
Isabel and Pacific. Okay.
Absolutely.
And what about the size on these? I mean, they're all smaller than the subject, some half the size, but
Yeah, the R2 zoning is pretty commonly smaller. Ours would be a pretty big R2 just for a standard residential lot.
now how do you do the search when you do for your R2? Is this the city's database?
Yeah, we have again lots of land sales, and I have had this property before, so I tried to find some comparable, similar to what I've used before. And again, they're tough sales to find these. Like, this is a parking lot off of Main Street.
And do you know anything about its history?
Other than it being a lot for the bank, I don't know any different than that.
And where's the bank located?
Just
What-
across the back, like the credit union across the back lane.
So that's 950
Same
Main?
owner. The address I don't have, but I believe it's just directly beside it from my understanding when I look at the street view.
Yeah, and 950 Main, it's a credit union, correct?
Mhm. Correct.
And are you aware that they're closing it?
No, I don't know what's currently happening with the credit union.
Okay, sorry, we heard it yesterday at hearing, and I wasn't even aware. They gave me this list of lots of land of properties to appeal, and I didn't put two and two together. I guess had we known that, we would have probably looked for the value of this in the building. But it is closing as a credit union. You weren't aware of that?
No, I was just looking as of the reference date.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Richter, any questions?
So the parking lot is owned by Access Credit Union. And we're not worried about it closing right now because we're dealing with the reference date. But it's treated as a separate property, a separate lot for assessment purposes. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, this is separate lot, separate roll number, everything across the back lane.
Okay. And it is dedicated to the Access Credit Union?
I can't confirm.
Okay.
I'm assuming it is. It's owned by them. I don't think there's any need to rent parking out there off of Selkirk and Main. I believe it's just parking lot for the bank, from my understanding.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Lupe, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you. They've been asked and answered.
Okay, and I know that Mr. Neufeld asked this question, but and I know that it's hard to find comparables, especially R2. This property probably won't be developed to R2. I think it's always going to be a parking lot. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds.
Yeah.
There's a chance it just stays as a parking lot for the building. Depends what it sells as, what that building becomes in the future. That would kind of change my answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if what's happening. Mr. Neufeld seems to think that it's closing. I know that was the former Carpathia Credit Union. I think it's been taken over by Access.
Mhm.
We pointed out. Okay, insofar as your comparables, and just looking at the part of the city, would you agree with me that the best comparables are probably the one on Isabella and Pacific?
Yeah, those are the two I kind of am leaning towards.
And there's quite a discrepancy between the two, but even Pacific is
And the Pacific was a sale a long time ago. That $14 hasn't
Yeah.
been adjusted at all. It's just the original sale price 10 years ago now.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, we looked at this and I was a little surprised because we have this database called Sabre, and I punched in R2 sales with roll numbers starting in 1-4, and 1-3, which is keeps it in the area. It's the old ward number, and because the subject is in the 1-4 ward. So I came up with a lot of sales of R2 land, although a lot of them were smaller, and it's the same problem the assessor pointed out. But I mean, our range was, pretty similar on all of these. And on page 2, for example, one on Sutherland, which is the number indicates it's just off Main Street, and I'm just looking at these. These are all in fairly close proximity, range of $9 to $14 a foot. I'm not sure about the comment saying it's always going to be R2 because the only demand we're going to see right now is for housing, and there are some small projects that may end up happening. It's just a question of the holding time. I thought we had one under appeal here. Oh, that's tomorrow. On some land on Winnipeg, but what there are is a number of smaller time investors who would buy the house with the appropriate zoning, and because they're fairly inexpensive to buy, and do a bit of a hold for putting up a multifamily site of some sort, and that's what I would see would probably work here, and It is, R2 at 15,000 feet. I just want to see what the bulk standards are on R2, which I did not put in here. Density, but there's likely room for 8 units here. I think that's where it would go. Carpathia was a part of the amalgamation with Access, and this branch was closed. The effective closing date when they're locking the doors is in December of this year. The notice came out in May, but the writing was on the wall with credit union amalgamation, and it has been for years. And you're right, we're not going to look at that in market value and use, but we can look at it in terms of market value in definition in the act. What is the price that someone would pay for it in the reference year and the market price? And you would look at it as though unencumbered, and not that it's a parking lot at all. That's not relevant to it at all. What would it be if it's unencumbered? And it would be for a holding for a multifamily development. And likely the hold period would be, I would guess, 3 to 5 years, 6 years maybe, that one would anticipate the hold. It's not going to cost much to hold, especially if you can get it rezoned to an R zoning instead of commercial zoning, or classification, I should say. So we think that $10 is probably the right rate on this piece of land based on the sales we have. And you'll notice that there's a lot of stuff in our report that doesn't belong there. It's kind of rushed, and just disregard pages 3
onward.
Yeah. 3 to 10. Unless you'd like to know more about the Osborne development.
We just heard that.
Okay.
And the other point I would have to make is I was listening to Mr. Newman earlier. This is a brand new. Well, we've always done access work, but it was only this year that the Carpathia jobs came to us. And had we been smart enough to clue into the connection, we probably would have said, we don't care what value you put on it, subtract it from 950 Main Street, which we heard yesterday. Hopefully we can sort all this out later. I think we're looking at a pretty fair number here on this, and that's my entire case. And sorry, I would like to point out that my sales range from 21 to 23, which are all much newer than what the assessor has. So this is also an indication of the market change based on the future development. People are buying for a holding amount, which is decreased because the hold requires the interest rate to hold and the eventual yield on the completed project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pitchik, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitburn, any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I don't either, but thank you for your presentation, Mr. Neufeld. It was helpful. And under that circumstance, then we can proceed with our next matter, which is the property at 3270 Pembina Highway.
Mr. Chair, may I request a quick 5-minute break just to use the washroom?
Absolutely, we can do that now. So
Thank you so much.
Why don't we come back then at 2:25?
Perfect. I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll proceed with the next matter, which is docket number 7, which is the property at 3270 Pembina Highway. And Mr. Spacek, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you very much. Just open the right one here. All right, we're looking at file number 32. File number 24-3495. This is roll number 030319600000 3270 Pembina Highway. We have a 2025 value of $1,251,000. This is a land area. This is again a vacant piece of land. Land area 67,227 square feet, zoned as a C2 commercial. We have some aerial pictures on page 2. You can see exactly where this is, just past the Pembina, going past the perimeter on your entrance into St. Norbert. You can see if you look closer at the lot at the bottom of picture page 2, this is the same owner as the lot beside it. There was a multifamily build years ago. This currently has, you can see the lot, it has less access. There's no direct access off Pembina. You have to actually access it off of, if you were to access it, would be through the parking lot of that one. So again, this land has been vacant for years. We have the workup of this this land value on page 4. So we have 67,227 square feet at $18.61 a square foot. And again, on page 5, I tried to find some larger sized commercial lots. So and also we have the first comparable in Waverly is again, residential multi-use, but I found 4 lots around that 60 to 90,000 square feet, so larger sizes. We have sales in 21 and 22, so tried to find some more recent sales, and these sales range from $25 to $32 a square feet. You can see pictures of these on page 6, comparable number 1 Waverly. Again, this is just north of Lee Boulevard. You can see on page 8, comparable number 2, 335 Northtown Road. Comparable number 3 is Center Street off of Bison Drive. And on page 12, you can see another comparable on Bison Drive, or just by the Center Street and Bison Drive. And if you have any questions, please let me know. That is my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newfield, any questions?
Yes. On your comparables, they're all within what's called Waverly West, correct?
Yeah.
And Waverly West is a very large 6,000 acre development. You're aware that the city spent $68.4 million to extend sewer and water services to it?
I'm not sure of the details, but I would take your word for it.
Okay, and that the site is completely serviced?
I would assume it is, yes.
And now have these sites been developed that you've brought forward?
I believe most of them, yes.
Do you know offhand what has been done on as development on each of them?
Usually, I believe multifamily.
Right. Okay, that's what I was thinking. So, I mean, generally the large commercial lots in Waverly West ended up being multifamily then, correct?
Yeah, I believe the commercial zoning allows multifamily on there.
Yeah.
With some, there's some rules around what you're allowed.
Sure, but C2 is the equivalent of RMFM. You don't need approval to build apartments on C2 land, though, do you?
Yeah, I believe if you hit certain requirements, then you're allowed to. But there's I think like you would need to have usually the first floor commercial from the last one I had. If some things like that, parking in certain locations.
No, no, it's an administrative approval. There's an equivalency on the zoning. It's in my evidence, but no, it's an automatic. But anyway, I'm giving evidence here. Okay, and did you have a chance to look at the restrictions that the subject property? I know I emailed you far too late. I don't know if you had a chance to read what was sent. The subject cannot be serviced.
Oh, sorry. What do you mean for email?
Oh, you may have already been in session on it. I was very, very late, but on my evidence, you did see, likely if you read it, you would see that the fact that it cannot be serviced. Now, does the city have a method of dealing with land that cannot be serviced? How would you value that in your model?
Well, again, I did. So I did look. I mean, I looked at your brief, so I understand there are some issues with the sewers. If again, what's going on with the zoning and what they want to build versus what can be built. I don't know. We don't usually make adjustments for that. I haven't seen any adjustments if a certain thing wants to be built by the developer and it's the city's unable to due to whatever reasons. I don't have any separate adjustments for that. I haven't seen that.
Well, I mean, this isn't a difference of opinion or desires. This is a physical blockage. So I'm just wondering if the city has a way of dealing with actual physical restrictions on land that you value. Like you just valued it, compared it to normal commercial land because that's the way the model said to do it. Do you have another way of applying the model to?
Well, again, for putting characteristically, you can adjust it where it is. What, is it landlocked? Does it have, access issues? Those kind of, characteristics you can adjust for the parcel. So then it's done within the model. So again, that's why I'm assuming this one's at $18. There's probably characteristics, some changes, but not one saying, hey, there's been an issue with the connecting to the sewer. I don't know if we have anything for that one.
Well, I guess my question is more like, you brought forward 4 comparables and you would say they were developed. So at some point there must have been some motivation that we were going to put a building on this and earn some revenue from it. Are you suggesting the subject has that same capability?
I'm saying that the $18 is trying to represent that it's not a perfect lot, right? If I'm supplying 4 comparables at $25 to $32, and I look at that and those are all developable and ours is having issues with the sewer, is something I would argue is that, hey, we're looking at a lower rent for that. Like what the difference need to be is,
Well,
not.
your mind is, do you know how long it's going to take to bring the sewer in?
I have no idea. I'm not, again, that's something I hope you'll present and explain because it's not
Okay,
part of my brief.
But what you're suggesting as an adjustment, does that not infer that the hold is only a short-term hold? For a short-term wait for development?
Yeah, I have no idea what the owner plans to do with his land. I can't speak to it.
Did you talk, and again, it's not your obligation to do so. I'm just curious if you managed to talk to anybody in property and planning about what's going to happen here.
No, I honestly read your brief on it and was hoping you would present the information that you thought was relevant to what the owner's going to do, to be honest.
Okay.
I can't answer.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Rupert, any questions?
I do. So, if I understand you correctly, then you weren't aware that this property did not have access to sewer when you did your evaluation?
No, the model valuation is all done well before I look at this or make my brief. The valuation was done. I made my brief. I reviewed the appellant's brief, and yes, I've came to learn the developer wants to develop a certain thing. And again, Mr. Neufeld will present on all of it. So I don't know enough about it to speak to it, to be honest.
Okay, but I understand that. And you didn't speak to Mr. Neufeld, obviously, prior to this meeting. Okay. Maybe can I pose you a hypothetical? If you had known firmly that the property needed sewer for the development plan and couldn't get it, would that affect your judgment and what you might have? Because I understand you can manually adjust these per square foot rates. Would you perhaps have thought about adjusting that square foot rate?
Yeah, I think I would look at what just like any other property, what the situation is. Does it market value make sense and have a discussion? Would I put it to $10? Probably not.
I understand that, yeah, because he's talking about a $10 value, not $10 per square foot.
Yeah, it's just
brief properly. Yeah.
If we're just doing a hypothetical, I don't think I would be able to do that.
Maybe he can.
Doesn't make sense to me.
When we get to our questions of Mr. Neufeld. I have no further questions.
Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Just one quick question, just referring to your page 5, Mr. Spacek. Which out of your comparables, the 4 you've listed, would you say is your best one?
I mean, in my mind, they're all pretty similar. The most closest in size, we're at 67,000 square feet. The closest sale was 64,000 square feet at comparable number 2. would be, I guess, argue the closest. C2, same zoning. It's $29.
Right, thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, I'm looking at page 3 of your brief, and you're showing a sale in 2013 for
Yeah.
$750,000. Do you have any idea what time adjustment would do to that amount?
You know what? I'm not sure of the condition of the sale. It was so old I actually didn't look into it. I don't know, because the owner owns the parcel next door. I would have to do more review to see, but I would believe over time from 2013 land value has went up in general.
You have no idea how much, and you have no idea then whether that depicts that's more value. This property.
Yeah. I haven't reviewed, and
Okay,
for
not
it being in
valuable.
2013, yeah, I wasn't sure with the owner next door and everything, so I didn't review it.
Okay, and would you say that a reasonable thing to do on this would be to take the value of the property as if it could be developed and had a sewer, and find out what the cost of putting that sewer in would be, and maybe deducting that amount, because that's got to be invested in it to bring it up to the value that the model would maybe create for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a logical way to, look at what could a value be for the property for sure. I think it's a way you could look at it to get a ballpark.
Okay, that's what I was sort of considering, and I was hoping that you could shed some light on the sale, but if you can't, that's fine. That's my questions then. Okay, Mr. Neufeld, your turn.
Yes, thank you. And I apologize, we weren't able to speak about this earlier, but it's just the way it is. The property, you probably figured out where we're coming from now. It can't be developed right now, and I'm going to have another idea on value. I've been thinking about this for a while, but first of all, facts. The property is owned by a very experienced developer. This isn't someone who's makes rash decisions, and it was purchased for development. And chronologically, I tried to put this all in order, starting on page 2. So this is the first response from in 2019 on the development, and then that was followed up by the property and planning report, running from page 4 onwards, and it went to a lot of things. Of interest is the page 7, which is the water and waste. So there is adequate water. And then it discusses that you have to enter into an agreement for service to upgrade at no expense to the city. All wastewater sewers required to service the planned area, as it indicated by the servicing report. Now, I never got a copy of the servicing report. And I was listening to the questions, and one of the questions was, well, what if you just paid for the sewer upgrades? Isn't it worth it? And I think that is what this speaks to, because there's usually a requirement to, in this case, there may have been some elevation issues, so perhaps maybe a lift station may have been required, or some broadening of the service connections. I should tell you that many years ago I worked for Atkins Underground, and I actually did underground sewer installation. It was not fun work, but I'm familiar with what they're talking about here. So the wastewater was the main one. Obviously, the land drainage system is not an issue, because I think they end up dumping in the Red River anyway, which is next door. But when you have to upgrade your waste system, what's typically figured in that is you'll have a stretch of street where your lines might be 24 inches, and they need you to go to 36 inches. And then you'll have to take that stretch of street and fix it to the main line. And what would happen in a case like this is, if an individual owner wanted to be the one who starts it off, that's fine, he pays for it. And then anybody else who wants to join into it has to pay their share later. So it's not a major expense. It's like a frontage foot amount, that ends up getting amortized, and the city actually can even finance it in their local improvement process. But that's not the case. This is a mainline problem. And so firstly, going through page 7, and then the rest of the report, this is his plan he's put forward. Page 9 shows you what he wanted to do. And then on the summary on page 10 is that all it says there is he requires a waterways permit, which is it's on the river. Of course, you need one of those all the time, but he's not intending on that being a factor. He needs a variance and a conditional use. And this is the administrative report, and there's his standards he was given. And so this is everything that he knew as he was going happily along his way. He knew that there was going to be a sewer delivery system that was basically a question of connecting to the main line. Now, what happened then on page 16, and this is dated June 20th, 23, is that Michael Jack, the CAO, wrote them and said, there's no service, period. There's no more capacity left in the system. And this will not be the first time this matter gets brought to the board. I have another property in a similar situation, and I'm aware now that there are about 5 or 6 properties that were simply told we no longer have capacity in our system. So this isn't just an upgrading of sections of the main line. This is the total system. So that's the Winnipeg South sewer treatment plant and everything that's connected with it do not have capacity to do this further. I haven't seen the full reports, and it's possibly that they have dedicated their services to existing projects, but there was some there was another communication from Marcus Chambers, who was the counselor, and he mentioned that there's a capital project, and I guess I'm not sure if I included it in here. So this is a capital funding project that has to go through the city's capital funding budget. This isn't a minor thing, and it's not the developer's problem anymore. It's a city problem. So they're not going to build it because they don't have the money. So after that, there's the owner's letter, page 16 to 18, and his complaints about it. And oh, there we go, Marcus Chambers. I knew it. Page 19. This is called a housing accelerator funding, is what they need to upgrade it, and that money is now going to the downtown area. And the second phase goes to the transit corridor, which is rapid transit. And after that, they might consider it for this particular property. And Mr. Chambers identifies 4 different builders who are sitting and waiting for this approval. This is also in the catchment area where there's been a bit of publicity about this land in St. Norbert that the owner wants to develop, and the residents are opposed to it. And I have no idea if there's a political linkage or not, but that property would also be impacted by it, I believe. So it's a capital funding project, not curable until the city cures it and gets funding from somebody else to do it. On page 21 and on is just a copy of what was presented for development of the site and the different access options. And this is just for information only. We're struggling with a very difficult issue here in terms of how do you value a property that's intention is to be commercially developed and earn revenue, and it can't be. And for example, if you wanted to turn it into a park, you couldn't do that either because you can't put a toilet in it unless it's a doggy park. There's no money in that. It's a long-term hold. Now, well, we had just said it has really no value now, and I've been doing some research on this, and we actually have run into the situation once before. When Centerport was coming in, all the people who were being developed and being expropriated on Centerport, it was for future development, and at the time there was no extension of services to their lands because the blockage had been that the city had to build a new main to it and get water for the Rosser part and extend the water treatment from the North End treatment plant. It is a similar situation in that they had to build mains on it. And the question put to the panel at the LVAC was, what is land worth that can be developed? We've got this great road that's going through it, and the city's contention was that servicing is unknown. It could be years and years. And I was working for the side of the expropriated party, and I said, it's going to be happen because it's in the works. It's going to be within a short-term period. And coincidentally, during our LVAC hearing, big announcement came out that the project had gone forward for extension of sewers and waters, but they couldn't take that into account for the decision because our hearing happened in 2018 and the effective date was 2010. And the board's decision was interesting in that they said that it is not serviced, but it has potential, and someone would pay for that potential. This was land on the perimeter highway in the west side of the city. This is land, the subject is land on the perimeter highway on the south part of the city. The board's decisions range from 27,000 to 50,000 per acre in terms of the potential value for a long-term hold, as it was suggested to them. And I think that same concept applies today, that it is a long-term hold. How much would you pay for it? I did check some other transactions we had dealt with long-term holds, and I can only present this information verbally. In 2018, I represented a property owner who was approached by Qualico to sold his land that was subbed with the same situation, and Qualico's offer was $50,000 per acre, cash money. Sorry, I was at the meeting and I thought that phrase was funny, but that's what the developer was willing to pay at the time for something that in the city limits that was going to be developed, just didn't know when. And I think that's probably the way we should look at it, but there's really a scarcity of market data on this sort of thing. So there is value to it. I would say today that the $50,000 mark suggested from 10 years prior is worth noting. I think this property is superior to that in location, but still questionable about when can you ever develop it. I'm just going to personally suggest $100,000 an acre for $150,000. And when and if development goes forward and proceeds, the owner would be very much welcome a supplemental assessment to change that value, because that means he can develop it. But until then, he's sitting holding no value whatsoever, and it's not his fault. It wasn't stupid decisions he made. It was an administrative series of events. Cities move slow. They have certain amount of capacity. And I deliberately asked the question about servicing on Waverly West because I knew that they had $68.4 million to service that area. They had it because they got it granted by the federal government and the provincial government to do it. And these are big projects. So it's going to take a project of that magnitude likely to extend the service. I mean, not that great. And it's also going to be based on community support and opposition as well. That would be my suggestion today, and that's just based on some experience I've had in matters like this. That's about it. I think as fair as we could consider $100,000 an acre for the hold until such time as this issue gets resolved to $150,000. And as I said, if they were approved for servicing tomorrow, the owner would gladly accept the supplemental. my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Mr. Neufeld, I just want to confirm, so you're asking, your request is 250 on this
No,
property?
150,000, 1.5 acres.
Okay.
So I got that number right here. Let's, yeah, but 1.5 acres at 100,000 an acre for, yes.
All right, thank you. Sorry, and you may have mentioned this. When was this property purchased?
I think the assessor had a date in here I agree with. Here is, okay, he had it here. Oh, in 2013, 750,000.
All right, I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Whipwread.
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, in 2013, when the property was purchased for $750,000, were there any services there?
No, there was no services, but as you can see from the due diligence, there was full expectation that it would be serviced.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, you did on page 19 indicate you gave us that email from Mr. Chambers, and I think I'm reading it correctly, where he says in the final paragraph, I think it would be critically important for some continued collaboration at this point to work out on an application that supports the idea of HAF funding in whole or in part to address the sewer capacity so development can commence along with the Pembina Strip. As the second phase is announced likely to in the fall, which I guess would be now, I would like this group to be among one of the first applications to be considered. So it looks like the city is looking at diverting funding towards updating and creating these sewers that are needed. So would that not, with that information, would that not reflect on what a developer would be prepared to pay for it?
Well, yeah, but it also, all it means is let's get, push our way to the head of the line to get money from the government, the Canadian government, to help develop this. That's the councillor's job. This is his constituent. And I'm reading right now the HAF funding, and it is, quote, cities all across Canada are facing significant challenges to housing affordability and availability. That's what it's all about. The city has developed 8 targeted action plan initiatives aiming at speeding up the rate of development, increasing the number of affordable units available in Winnipeg. That is the target. Now, you're going to build a place on the Red River, whether it's multifamily or commercial, it's not going to be affordable housing. They're not going to get the funding. So, I mean, I'm just being kind of off the top of my head here, saying they're not going to get this funding. The council's going to.
That's your answer, Mr. Neufeld, okay?
Yeah.
Don't go any further. But I'm just saying, it looks like the city, though, at least Mr. Chambers is indicating that he sees some responsibility by the city to put in the sewers that are needed. And it looks like it's going to be something that the developer may not have to do.
Well, no, and the councillor is certainly trying to help and do his best, but that's not getting the funding, which is the Canadian program sponsored by Government of Canada and the CMHC, is not one that is geared at this sort of property, and it's I think it's a long shot. It's a deflection of a problem, and I don't think a developer would take that, have any hope in this at all. I don't see it. I mean, and I don't think there's enough money privately to pay any of these costs to do it, because it kills the project to have a major line being paid for it for developers.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. You don't have to go further. I hear what you're saying. You give me an answer, and I appreciate it.
I think that I'm thinking out loud. If somewhere along the line they had established that there was affordable housing they could build in the neighborhood that would benefit from this, and they could extend and improve, upgrade the services, and this property could hook into it, that might work. I don't know of anything that's happening there, though.
Okay, so when this was purchased by the developer, he assumed that there was sewer lines through the property line that he could hook into, and he just have to pay for that 1 foot to pay for some of the costs to bring it to him. And then, of course, the sewers on the developed property itself would be his.
That's correct. I mean, like you can see that he had hired Robin Lee of I've forgotten that Robin's company again, and Robin's worked on a lot of these projects, and you know the expectation was no, you don't have sewer, but the main line is situated. I believe I'm trying to remember. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to guess it's on the west side of Pembina Highway, and that means that you're going to have to bring a feeder line out under the highway, and then a service line for the properties on the east side of the highway. So that's going to come out of the main and run under the highway, and then a distribution system. And I think that's what they were all going to have to look at, and then split the cost by frontage foot for the particular developers, the 4 people named there. That's not possible though.
Oh, you're looking at, I understand, you're looking at huge costs, so, okay, I think that, thank you, you answered my questions, and, I have no other, so. You can leave that with us, and we'll now proceed to the last item of the docket today, which is number 8, and that is, we just have not an address, but Center Street, item number 8. And when you're ready, Mr. Spacek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final one vacant lot of the day, file number 24-3864. We have roll number 030930146225. This is no number on Center Street, but you can see exactly where it's located on the pictures on the next page. We have a 2025 value of $2,057,000. So this is a $78,387 square foot lot, zoned MMU, which is again, our manufacturing mixed use. The description of that zoning can be on page 3 and page 4, but just to give you an idea, this district is intended to provide linked commercial and industrial activities that are supportive of industrial functions and are compatible with surrounding industrial use areas, while allowing more flexibility of uses and requiring a higher standard of landscaping and design. Uses may include offices, wholesale and business service establishments, campus-style industrial or business parks, and limited retail personal service storefronts. So just to see where this is exactly on page 2, again, we're in Waverly West, where a few of my comparables were last time, and I'm using the same comparables for this property. You'll see why, but again, for those not familiar with Waverly West, it looks like it's on the corner of Southtown Road and Kenniston Boulevard. We have the actual income workup for the actual land workup for this property on page 5. So we're looking at 78,387 square feet at $26.24. That's how you get to the $2,057,000. Again, on page 6, I have the same comparables as last time. You can see that we are located nearby to the subject property, all with larger square footages to try to take into account the large size of this lot. And again, we have a range of sales from $25 up to $32. And all these sales happen between 2021 and 2022. If we turn to page 7 onward, again, the same picture as last time, but you can see you can see exactly where these properties are located and aerial views of them for the comparables. And that is my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, any questions?
Yes. No, you mentioned zoning MMU. So that's an industrial zoning. Any industrial uses in this area?
Just strictly industrial, not from my understanding. What I did was I just looked at the other MMU in the area and checked out what they built. Like in if you turn to my page 3, you'll see the other MMU. Across the street, there's the gym they built. They have some like dental and medical offices, and you know. So again, I think that mixed uses, they're hoping to find some more stuff like that. Would be my my understanding of the zoning.
Did you look into the Waverly West overlay planning?
Like how the area is split up?
Well, in 2008, they put the planning forward to the province, as a long-term planning document. Did you see the usages that were approved? I'm just
Specifically,
what
no, I don't
you
have the
know.
list.
Okay, no, there's a story behind the MMU zoning, so you're not aware of it. That's fine. There's no industrial uses though here, are there?
No, like that's what I mean by the mixed use. I just looked to see what else was under it because it had stuck out to me as well.
And the property, you don't have a sale listed on it. That's because it was a subdivision from the larger parcel, correct?
Yeah, if there was a sale, it must have been, it wasn't under, yeah, it must have been split up for the larger portion. I didn't see a sale.
And do you know what that price was on that larger portion, what they paid for their land?
No, I don't have the sale in front of me.
Okay, is it still the same owner, to your knowledge?
I don't know. I don't, again, and the sale never came up, so I did not see the sale for this lot.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading the old one here. Okay, and then these again are the same comparables. And you had mentioned in the earlier questioning that the comparables you brought forward have all been developed at this point to multifamily of some sort,
Most commonly, yeah.
and the subject is still vacant, correct?
From my understanding, yes.
And will it be, is it permissible to develop it for multifamily?
Not under MMU from my understanding.
Okay. So wouldn't it be more appropriate to have sales of parcels that had similar zoning approval regulations?
Well, yeah, in this area, again, I couldn't find any MMU sales. So I like you said, it's has some sort of interesting history. I didn't have an MMU sale. I tried to use the closest sized lots that sold, and they ended up selling and turning to multifamily the majority. But again, these are what the large lots are going for. Ours is at 26, 24, and that's what I have in front of you for my brief.
And you're aware that this is probably the first time in Winnipeg's history we've had a major planned community, correct?
I mean, maybe of this scope, I'm not sure. Sage Creek, I'm not sure some of the other ones how they compare size wise.
Okay. I don't think I have a lot of questions on this. No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have none, thank you.
I guess the only question I have, and it's brought up from what Mr. Neufeld has asked. Will this property likely be developed as, I know you said it wouldn't be likely industrial, would it be likely multi-residential?
I don't believe there would be I don't know if multi-residential is possible on this this MMU zoning. Again, what I did was I compared to the ones around, like right around the other gray. So if you turn to my page 3 where it shows the gray zoning, that's MMU, you can't see past the gray zoning. But again, on the other side of Center Street, they built a large gym just south in the same, where it's part of the same, in the same area of the gray between Kennison and Southtown. They've built a lot of kind of single story retail slash, like dental stuff like that, is what has been built so far. But this portion of the lot is still vacant.
Okay, I always thought that you could always go to a less restrictive zoning, but not a more restrictive.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure what they're requesting. I'm not sure to be honest, if they're trying for something else. I don't know.
So if you have industrial zoning, you can go to commercial, or you can go to multi-residential for that matter, I thought.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, that's my last question then. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. So the property is in Waverly West, and I I get around a lot. I've been doing jobs in Waverly West for ever since they first announced that they were going to try to obtain the land, I think starting in 2005. And first commercial report I did was in 2010. The first purchaser of land in Center that they purchased for $400,000 an acre. Now, what's happened Waverly West, I'm gonna make my long story short, is that they had intentions and the intentions didn't exactly happen as they had hoped. So starting on page 5, this was the first plan for it. So we had 6 sections and a town center. This, I think, plan was circa 2007. On page 6 became the close to the final version with Bridgewater Center, and then the 6 areas again identified, and what was eventually built was on page 7. So the entire I don't, there's a word for this type of image. It's related to a fish, but this irregular shape that was identified on page 6 was supposed to all be commercial, and along with the green space. And see, the green space was the buffer zone, commercial to residential, and then multifamily would encompass it on the exterior. And what ended up happening was on page 7 is that the multifamily dominated the development. What I've tried to do is outline in red is what remained commercial, and that's my bad graphics work. The reasoning why is that it wasn't so much an error as the misunderstanding about commercial space is that commercial space, the users don't rush in to buy the space until they know there's business to conduct. And when the project was approved in 2008, people very much doubted that it would be absorbed as quickly as it was. And it wasn't until about 2010 when the first lots went on sale that it was a hit. And at that point, the residential users stepped up, and the retail users still weren't that hard set on the space. So they gobbled up the interior of the commercial area for multifamily, and then they went to a larger area than they thought, than the first developers had thought. And that's the genesis of this. And then so today on page 8 is the plan overlay, and you can see that how the lots have been split up. Now, to note on this is you can see where there's the small lot subdivisions are obviously residential, but the ones that are on either side of Center Street, in the center of this diagram, are actually condominium developments, and that's why they're large lots. And just coincidentally, I happened to own one for a while, just finally sold it and got rid of it on Park Road. But so the actual commercial part of this development was pretty much limited to the north pointy part and the south pointy part of this, where it had been intended to be much broader, and it really just had to do with the market demand. Now, the question about interchangeability of zoning, first of all, the reason why there are MMU zoning is not because they were encouraging industrial. There's a plan overlay on this, the Waverly West plan, which had to be submitted to the provincial government for approval, as they all do these days, and dominates. So what it does is it establishes the greater overlying directives for this area, and it's always been in that plan. It's going to be retail or residential, or retail office, etc., or residential. The reason they put in the MMU was to save some areas just for retail. On my page, now you can see this on my page 11. This is the bulk planning. And if you note under the first category, household living, and then the column marked MMU on the right, nothing residential is permitted in MMU. So this was their way of saving space for retail to come in later, and because they were lagging behind the absorption by the residential. And as a result, what was first envisioned with this, and again, I was working a lot with this. What was first envisioned on us, they thought they would get a big shopping center. Had Costco dreams in their head. Not that Costco was going to go there; they already had a spot, but maybe Walmart and Home Depot and a superstore. And as it got absorbed by other users, they ended up saving space for retail services. So today, the users here are mostly what we call retail service. A dentist, doctors, liquor store, a small grocery store, gas stations, veterinarian, places that people go to every day for things, not your major shopping centers. No Home Depot, nothing of that sort. So that's what it's been relegated to. So that's what's been hurting some of the major development. The Northtown one, which is on the north pointy part, that was purchased by one group who ended up doing small strips with it, because that's at this point all they were going to get in. So this particular piece is owned by, coincidentally, the same party who owns 634 Portage and 160 Donald. And this was one of their retail developments. As they moved along, they were able to develop the strip. And that's on page, I guess the best representation is on page 1, which is the land outside the subject area. So they built a strip there. And this was the remnant land, and they were trying to preserve an area for a larger user. And at one point they had a user who was interested in it and they wanted to have their own title on it, so they subdivided it. Nothing came of that. This land cannot have apartments on it. It has to be something that's permitted in MMU and also permitted by the long-term planning document. Retail, office, personal services. That's what it's going to be. And one of the big users here that would fit there is that fitness facility, which is, what's it called, Orange or something? It's huge, but that was sort of the thinking. And the other big user in the area is Payworks, who are actually down the road a bit. But as a result, I think they have a very limited, restricted market for it. And I think that the assessors' comparables are demonstrate the concept of the duality of uses. He's brought forward sales that if you don't sell them to retail, you can sell them to multifamily. You got two different groups who are bidding it up, and you're hitting the value. Whereas this one is only going to get interest from one of those groups, and that's the major impact on the market of it. When we had looked at it, and you've seen all our sales here, and we have a mix of sales. Most all of these ended up being apartments because that's all it's selling these days. Again, page 3 is the concept of the interest rates are being a drag on prices right now. So our number was a little bit lower than the assessor had. We think it's probably closer to about $20 a square foot, which is roughly a little under $900,000 per acre. Being it's a location, it's a remnant piece, and the retail interest, like the big box is out. That's the other thing about the retail. When your big box is out and your big users are out, you're also losing, investor interest, because investors look at the mom and pop shops and for some personal services, and they say, well, that's really not going to generate a good return. And the banks have all picked their spots; they're all in. There's no more big users that are on the horizon. So we're thinking around the $20 a foot mark is probably fair for it. Just as, it hasn't sold yet, which tells you that it's not exactly a hot commodity. It's a leftover. It's the last part of the site. And if tomorrow they could get zoning approval to change it to multifamily, there'd probably be a sale. But it's not going to happen. until without a lot of work. And actually, it's not going to happen without probably maybe. I've got to think about this. They might have to amend the plan at the provincial government on it too. So, but they do have sewer capacity because Waverly West was all got sewer capacity. So that's kind of where we're at with it. Is that we don't think the assessment is too far off the mark. It's just indicating a competitive bidding for retail and multifamily, and it's lost. It doesn't have the multifamily component to it, so it's going to have less market demand. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Spacek. Any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Ripper, any questions?
I have none, thanks.
Ms. Luke, any questions?
I also have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Neufeld, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have a commercial zoning, or an industrial zoning even, you can put commercial in it. You can always go down in the ladder. You can't go up. Is that not correct?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at this the zoning map. The MMU, I like I said, I was had a lot of involvement with this. I know why it was selected. It was so that residential was not going to be allowed in it to preserve some space. Page 11, no residential. But if you look down to the retail,
Yeah, no, I asked you to answer my question though, instead of going.
I don't think like the downward going down. It's a very strange zoning. You don't see it a lot in the city. People either get M1, M2, M3. Let's just. I think that the broad answer is.
I think Mr. Neufeld, you can go down. You can't go up.
Yeah. Well, when you mean down, though, I don't understand what that means.
Meaning you can't go to a more restrictive zone. You can't take a commercial property and build. You can't fabricate stuff there, but you can on industrial land. You can put commercial uses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly it. Most all commercial uses, like retail uses, would be approved on MMU.
Yeah, and even residential.
Just not the dwellings.
Okay. Now you asked for $20 a square foot, and I had the liberty because I know you're using acres, so I multiplied $20 by 43,560.
Yeah.
And I got per acre. You're thinking this land is worth 871,000 per acre, and I'm looking at all your comparables, and I can't see anything that comes anything close to that low. So why?
Well, that's the part of the reason is that most all these are multifamily sales because we haven't had any a ton of retail sales or commercial sales. There are some in the chart on page 3. No, they're not. They're all residential. You have a good point there.
It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, but everything on page 2 went residential.
Yeah.
Oh, except not that one. Oh, point. I take that back. I don't even know what that is. So let me just see if there were any others here that went. No. I understand. Yeah, I mean it's I think that's a valid point. I think at this time we're probably trying to make estimates for a land that hasn't that we don't have comps for, and I'm simply saying it's inferior to multifamily, and I would agree that 800 and whatever an acre is. I mean, you know, conceivably it could be 900 and 950 per acre. You know, I'm looking at it now. We picked 20 because it's a nice round number.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Neufeld, and we'll now have to consider these matters. Thank you for presenting your evidence. Thank you, Mr. Spacek. We've now heard all items on the docket today, so we'll just make our determinations, and you'll all receive them very shortly, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.